I built my landscaping business from nothing but a secondhand truck and a lawnmower. 7 years of sweat and determination turned it into something I could be proud of. Then I met Jessica at a charity event I was helping organize. She came from old money while I came from old determination. When she said yes to my proposal, I thought we would build our future together as equal partners. I never expected what would happen in that prenup meeting. I will never forget how cold her voice sounded when she said those words. Before I continue with my story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button and give this video a like if you have ever felt undervalued in a relationship. Now let me tell you how my fiancée showed her true colors when money was involved. I started my landscaping company when I was 22 years old, with nothing but determination and a rusty Ford F-150 I bought from my uncle. Every morning for years I woke up at 5 a.m. to get to my first job sites before the heat kicked in. Gradually, one satisfied customer led to another, and Oscar Landscaping grew from just me to a team of 15 dedicated employees serving 3 counties. The day I met Jessica changed everything. I was setting up for a garden charity fundraiser at the local botanical gardens. My company had donated the decorative arrangements, and I was personally ensuring everything looked perfect. Jessica was a volunteer coordinator, clipboard in hand, directing the caterers with confident efficiency. She wore a simple blue sundress that day, her blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. What struck me most was how she treated everyone with the same respectful tone, whether they were serving staff or wealthy donors. When she approached me to thank me for the beautiful arrangements, our conversation flowed naturally, and we ended up talking long after the event ended. Only later did I learn that her father, Howard Phillips, owned Phillips Development, one of the largest real estate companies in the state. Jessica had grown up in a world of country clubs and private schools, while I had worked summers since age 14 to help my single mother pay rent. Despite our different backgrounds, Jessica seemed genuinely interested in my journey. She asked thoughtful questions about my business plans and listened intently to my answers. On our third date, she even volunteered to help plant trees for a community project my company was sponsoring. Over the next 18 months, we built what I believed was a strong foundation. We traveled together, met each other's families, and spent countless evenings discussing our hopes for the future. I admired her intelligence and compassion. She claimed to admire my work ethic and vision. Her parents were cordial during our first few meetings. Howard would ask pointed questions about my business growth plans, while her mother Margaret would share stories about their early days before wealth came. They seemed impressed when I described expanding my business into commercial property maintenance and sustainable landscaping design. When I decided to propose, I saved for 4 months to buy a ring that was modest by their standards, but represented significant sacrifice for me. I chose the botanical garden where we first met, arranging a private dinner among the flowering cherry trees. When she said yes, tears streaming down her face, I believed our different worlds had truly become one. Her parents hosted an engagement party at their sprawling lakeside home, raising crystal flutes of champagne that probably cost more than my first truck. Howard clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Welcome to the family, son." Margaret kissed my cheek and whispered how happy Jessica seemed with me. We began planning our future together with excitement. Jessica suggested combining our strengths, her social connections, and my business experience to potentially expand Oscar Landscaping into new markets. We discussed buying our first home together, starting with something modest but with good bones, as Jessica put it. We even picked out names for our future children. The first subtle warning came during Sunday dinner at her parents' house. Howard casually mentioned that their family attorney would be drafting up a standard prenup for us to sign. Standard protection, nothing personal, he said between sips of bourbon. I noticed Jessica's eyes drop to her plate, but she quickly changed the subject to wedding venues. While I understood protecting family wealth, something about how casually they mentioned the prenup left me uneasy. Still, I told myself it was reasonable given the financial disparity between us. When I brought it up with Jessica later that night, she squeezed my hand and assured me it was just a formality. "Just some boring paperwork my dad insists on," she said. Nothing that will affect us or how we build our life together. I wanted to believe her, but I also needed to understand what I might be signing. I reached out to my friend Marcus, who worked as a financial advisor, to get his perspective. "You need to know exactly what rights you are giving up," Oscar Marcus warned over coffee. "Even if you trust Jessica, completely prenups are legally binding documents that can impact your entire future." I spent the next week researching what fair prenuptial agreements typically included. I learned that, while they often protected premarital assets, reasonable agreements also addressed shared growth and contributions to the marriage beyond direct income. Jessica arranged for me to meet with her family attorney, Mr. Pop Bradford, before our joint meeting. His office occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise, with a view that made even the tallest trees look like miniatures. His handshake was firm, but his smile never reached his eyes. "So you run a gardening service?" he asked, glancing at his notes. "It's a full-service landscaping company," I corrected politely. "We handle everything from initial design to installation and maintenance for both residential and commercial properties." His expression remained unchanged. "Well, I am sure it keeps you busy. Now, let's discuss the agreement the Phillips family would like to put in place." As he outlined the initial terms, my discomfort grew. The proposal heavily protected Jessica's current and future interests, while offering little acknowledgement of any contribution I might make to our partnership. I raised several points about fairness and partnership, which he noted with thinly veiled impatience. When I left the meeting, I called Jessica, immediately expressing my concerns about the one-sided nature of the agreement. She sounded distracted. "Daddy just wants to make sure everything is properly handled," she said. "We can discuss it more at the official signing next week." Over the following days, I noticed Jessica becoming increasingly absorbed in wedding planning, mostly the aspects that showcased expense rather than meaning. She spent hours discussing flower arrangements that cost more than some of my employees made in a month. Yet she postponed our conversation about where we would live after marriage. At dinner with some of her friends from the country club, I felt increasingly out of place as they discussed their recent European vacations and second homes. Jessica laughed along with them when one joked about her fiancé not knowing the difference between sailing and yachting. She seemed like a different person in their company, more concerned with appearances than connection. Our first major argument erupted during wedding budget discussions. When I suggested allocating some funds toward a house down payment rather than spending it all on a single day, Jessica looked at me like I had suggested wearing jeans to a black tie event. "My parents are paying, so why do you care?" she snapped. "Because it reflects our values as we start our life together," I replied. Her face hardened. "Well, some of us value creating proper memories and appearances. It's not like your business is bringing much to the table anyway. It's just landscaping." Those words stung more than she knew. Just landscaping had put me through sleepless nights, calloused hands, and years of sacrifice. Still, I told myself everyone gets stressed during wedding planning. We would work through these differences like we had others. As the wedding date approached, so did our prenup signing meeting. Despite my growing concerns, I remained hopeful that Jessica and I could find common ground. I believed that our love was stronger than these financial disagreements. I convinced myself that once the wedding stress passed, we would return to being the couple who had spent hours dreaming about our future together. The night before the prenup meeting, Jessica barely spoke during dinner, fixated on her phone and wedding vendor emails. When I tried to discuss the agreement again, she sighed heavily. "Can we not do this tonight? Just sign the papers tomorrow, so we can move on to more important things." "The marriage itself should be the important thing," I said quietly. She looked up from her phone briefly. "It will be, once all this paperwork is behind us." As I drove to the law office the next morning, I still believed we could find a compromise that respected both our positions. Despite the warning signs, I wasn't prepared for what would happen next. The law offices of Bradford, Jensen & White occupied 3 floors of the glass tower downtown. The reception area featured marble floors, leather furniture, worth more than my first business loan, and artwork that probably cost more than my annual revenue. Every detail screamed old money and established power. I arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in my best suit, the one Jessica had helped me select from a high-end store, where the salespeople initially looked at me like I had wandered in by mistake. The receptionist directed me to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows and a mahogany table long enough to seat 20. I waited alone, reviewing my notes about fair compromise points. The door opened 30 minutes later, not with Jessica alone as planned, but with her entire entourage. Jessica entered first, dressed in a tailored navy business suit I'd never seen before. Her parents followed with Mr. Bradford bringing up the rear, carrying a leather portfolio. "Sorry we're late," Howard announced without sounding sorry at all. Traffic was murder downtown. Jessica took a seat across from me rather than beside me, avoiding direct eye contact. Her mother patted her hand supportively, while Howard launched into small talk with Bradford about their recent golf game. I sat silently, increasingly aware of the dynamic forming in the room, me on one side, the Phillips family unit on the other. Bradford finally opened his portfolio and distributed copies of the prenuptial agreement. The document spanned 20 pages of dense legal language, but he summarized the key points with practiced efficiency. As discussed, all assets acquired before marriage remain. Separate property, Bradford began. All inheritances, gifts, and business interests owned prior to the marriage remain solely with their original owner. This seemed standard and reasonable. I nodded. Additionally, he continued, all assets acquired during the marriage, regardless of source or contribution, will remain the separate property of the party who acquired them. I looked up sharply. Weight that effectively eliminates any concept of marital partnership. Bradford smiled thinly. It simply maintains clear boundaries of ownership. So, if Jessica's family investments grow during our marriage, that's solely hers, and if my business grows because she connects me with her father's wealthy associates for contracts, that's solely mine. Howard cleared his throat. Jessica will be bringing substantially more financial resources to this union. This merely protects those resources. But marriage is about building something together, I countered. This sounds like we're just going to be roommates with separate bank accounts. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. I looked directly at Jessica, hoping to find the woman who had once talked excitedly about our shared future. Instead, her expression was cool and distant. "Jessica, what do you think about these terms?" I asked softly. She finally met my eyes, her voice crisp and businesslike. "This is what makes sense, Oscar. You can't touch my money. It's all mine. You keep yours, I keep mine." The bluntness of her statement hit me like a physical blow. Not our money. Not our future. My money. All mine. "Let me be frank," Oscar Howard interjected. "My daughter stands to inherit considerable wealth. We need to ensure that remains protected, regardless of what happens between you two." "Are you suggesting I'm marrying her for money?" I asked incredulously. Bradford interjected smoothly. "These protections are standard for clients of a certain net worth." I tried once more. "Jessica, when we talked about our future, about building a life together, did you envision this complete financial separation?" She glanced at her father before answering. "Daddy has always managed our family finances responsibly. I'm just following his guidance." In that moment, everything became painfully clear. Jessica had never seen me as an equal partner. Despite her words of admiration for my work ethic and business acumen, she fundamentally viewed me as beneath her financially, someone who might take advantage of her wealth. Every conversation we'd had about building our future together suddenly felt hollow. I closed the prenup document slowly and deliberately. I noticed my hands were steady, despite the storm of emotions inside me. Looking around the table at the Phillips family and their attorney, I did the only thing that felt right in that moment. I smiled. Then I stood up, buttoned my suit jacket, and said, simply, "I think we have different understandings of what marriage means. I need some time to consider whether our values align enough for a lifetime commitment." Bradford appeared startled. "Mr. Montgomery, we have the notary ready. Perhaps we could discuss amendments." I shook my head. No need for amendments today. I walked toward the door, turning back briefly to look at Jessica. Her composed facade had cracked confusion and alarm replacing her previous coolness. "Oscar, wait," she called. "Where are you going?" "To think about what kind of marriage I actually want," I replied. Then I walked out of the prenup meeting. In the elevator down, my phone began buzzing with texts from Jessica. "Where are you? You're embarrassing us. This is just business. Don't be emotional. Please come back." By the time I reached my truck, she was calling repeatedly. I silenced my phone and drove home in complete silence, the full weight of what had just happened settling over me. The woman I thought I knew, the future I thought we were building together, had been revealed as something entirely different. That night, as Jessica continued calling and texting with increasing desperation, I made a decision. I needed time away from her influence to think clearly about what had happened and what it meant for our relationship. I turned off my phone, packed a bag, and drove to my cabin in the mountains where Jessica and I had once talked about starting a family. For the first time since meeting Jessica, I gave myself permission to be completely alone with my thoughts. The small cabin by the lake had been my sanctuary before our relationship, a place where I would come to recharge after particularly demanding work seasons. Id brought Jessica here 3 months into our relationship, and Shed claimed to love its rustic charm and peaceful setting. Now I wondered if Shed'd simply been performing for me, pretending to appreciate my values while secretly finding them quaint or beneath her standards. The morning after the prenup disaster, I finally turned my phone back on to notify my business manager about my absence. 47 missed calls and 32 text messages from Jessica waited for me. They tracked an emotional journey from anger to confusion to pleading. "How dare you walk out like that? My parents are furious. Call me immediately. Oscar, please talk to me. I'm sorry if you misunderstood. We can work this out. Please don't throw away what we have. I miss you." I sent her a brief message. "I need time to think. We'll contact you when I'm ready to talk." Then I called Marcus, who had become my closest confidant during the relationship, and asked him to recommend a good attorney who specialized in prenuptial agreements. I needed an objective professional assessment of what Jessica and her family had proposed. 2 days later, I met with attorney Diana Washington at a cafe near my cabin. After reviewing copies of the documents Bradford had provided, she looked up with concerned eyes. "This is among the most one-sided prenups I've ever seen," she stated plainly. "It essentially negates the financial partnership aspect of marriage entirely. Even contributions you might make to the growth of family assets would remain solely hers." "So my instincts were correct," I said. She nodded. "Marriage is both an emotional and legal partnership. This document undermines the legal side completely." That evening, I hiked around the lake, reflecting on the 18 months Id spent with Jessica. I began recognizing patterns. Id ignored how she always chose restaurants where she would be recognized by the staff, how she subtly corrected my table manners early in our relationship, how she had redesigned my apartment without truly consulting me, how she had never once visited my childhood neighborhood. Id mistaken her interest in improving me for love, rather than seeing it as a project of molding me to fit acceptably into her world. By the 5th day of my retreat, Jessica's attempts to contact me had escalated. According to Marcus, Shed even shown up at my office looking for me. My business manager reported that Shed come to my home 3 times, the last time in tears. On day 6, I received an email from Bradford, offering a slightly revised prenuptial agreement. The modifications were cosmetic at best, still maintaining the fundamental separation of all assets during marriage. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. My business manager called with news that Westland Properties, a major commercial developer, wanted to contract Oscar Landscaping for their new sustainable office park project. This contract alone would nearly double my company's annual revenue. Ironically, it was the kind of opportunity Jessica had once promised her connections would bring, yet it had come entirely through my team's reputation for quality work. The timing felt significant. While Jessica and her family had been assessing my worth in dollars and cents, my actual worth in my field, had taken a leap forward through my own merit. This realization strengthened my resolve about what I deserved in a partnership. After a full week of reflection, I texted Jessica I'm back in town. We can meet tomorrow at Green Park at 2 p.m. to talk. Her reply came instantly. Thank God. I'll be there. I love you. The next day I arrived at the park early, choosing a bench near the duck pond, where families were feeding birds and children were playing. I wanted a public neutral space for this conversation. Jessica arrived looking uncharacteristically disheveled. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her normally perfect hair pulled back hastily. She wore jeans and a simple sweater rather than her usual carefully curated outfits. She rushed toward me, arms outstretched, but stopped when I didn't rise to embrace her. Oscar, she began, voice trembling. I am so sorry about what happened. I never meant to hurt you. What exactly are you sorry for, Jessica? I asked calmly. Her eyes darted around. For the prenup situation, for how it made you feel, not for what it revealed about how you see me, about how you see our marriage. She sat beside me, reaching for my hand, which I gently moved away. My parents pressured me. Oscar. They insisted on those terms. I just wanted to make them happy and move forward with our wedding plans. And in doing so, you showed me exactly where I stand with you, I replied. You were willing to start our marriage on terms that fundamentally disrespected my contribution to our partnership. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I made a mistake. We can change the agreement to whatever makes you comfortable. This isn't about the specific terms, Jessica. It's about discovering that the person I plan to spend my life with sees me as financially inferior, as someone to be guarded against rather than partnered with. That's not true, she protested. I love you for you, not for money. Then why insist that everything remains separate? Why claim that I can't touch your money because it's all yours? Those aren't the words of someone who views their spouse as an equal. She looked down. Daddy has always taught me to protect myself financially. He says that's just being smart. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have a prenup, I explained. I'm saying it should reflect a partnership of equals even if our financial contributions are different. What would that even look like? She asked, seeming genuinely confused. It would acknowledge that we both bring value to the relationship, that while we protect what we bring in, we share what we build together. That your contribution might be capital while mine might be growing my business, or supporting your career, or raising our children someday. Jessica was quiet for a long moment. My parents won't like that. Are you marrying me or your parents? I asked gently. Our conversation continued for hours, moving from the park to a nearby cafe as evening approached. Jessica revealed how deeply her father's financial control had shaped her view of relationships. She'd never questioned his approach until now, when it threatened to cost her someone she claimed to truly love. By the end of our talk, I had established clear, non-negotiable conditions for moving forward. We would draft a new prenuptial agreement, with both our attorneys present from the start. Her parents would not be involved in the negotiation. And most importantly, Jessica would need to demonstrate through actions, not just words, that she valued our partnership beyond finances. I'm not sure if I can stand up to my father, she admitted. Then, I'm not sure we can build a life together, I responded honestly. 3 days later, Jessica called with surprising news. She'd told her parents she was postponing the wedding until we could reach an agreement that respected both our interests. Her father had threatened to cut her off financially. For the first time in her life, Shed stood her ground against him. I want a real partnership with you, Oscar, she said. I want to be brave enough to build something that's ours, not just my family's. It was the first step in what would become a challenging, but ultimately transformative journey for both of us. 3 years have passed since that prenup meeting that nearly ended our relationship before it truly began. Looking back, it was the crisis we needed to build something authentic. Jessica and I did eventually marry, but only after completely redefining our relationship on terms that valued both our contributions. The revised prenup protected both of us. Fairly, our premarital assets remained separate, but anything we built together during marriage would be shared equally. Jessica surprised everyone, including herself, by standing firm against her father's manipulative tactics. When he threatened to disinherit her, she replied that she would rather build her own legacy with someone who respected her as an adult. My landscaping business has flourished beyond my expectations, with the Westland Properties contract opening doors to other major commercial projects. Jessica eventually left her ceremonial position at her father's company to earn a real estate license, bringing her natural talent for connecting with people into a career she actually built herself. She's now my company's real estate development consultant, identifying potential properties for our expanding sustainable landscaping designs. What's most remarkable is the change in Jessica herself. Without the pressure to maintain her family's facade of perfection, she's discovered her authentic self, someone who cares more about substance than appearances. Our wedding was smaller and more meaningful than originally planned, with guests who genuinely cared about our happiness rather than social obligations. Last year, we welcomed our son James into the world. Watching Jessica become a mother has revealed the final layers of the woman I fell in love with: compassionate, protective, and unwilling to repeat her parents' mistakes. Her father has gradually come around, especially after seeing the success we've built together. He recently admitted over a rare shared dinner that he might have judged me too harshly. The greatest lesson I learned through this journey was that knowing your worth isn't about dollar amounts or social status. It's about refusing to accept relationships that devalue your contribution. By walking out of that prenup meeting, I wasn't rejecting Jessica. I was rejecting an unbalanced relationship that would have slowly eroded my self-respect. True partnership requires mutual respect, especially when it comes to sensitive subjects like finances. Jessica and I had to tear everything down to build something real, but what we created is stronger than what either of us could have imagined. If you've ever faced a moment where you had to choose between your dignity and something you desperately wanted, I hope my story gives you courage. Sometimes walking away is the only path forward. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to maintain your self-respect in a relationship? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more real-life lessons. And if you know someone struggling with similar relationship power dynamics, share this video with them. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, your worth is determined by who you are, not by what you own or earn.